Hello and welcome. This is Sam Horn, and we are here with our Stop Wishing, Start Writing community, and we are going to be discussing this really brilliant book. Let's see, there are only, how many pages? Well, 159 pages. And yet he does a deep dive into this thing called resistance, and that's what we'll be discussing here tonight. So our book club is on The War of Art, Break Through the Blocks and Win Your Inner Creative Battles by Steven Pressfield. Now, I've gone through the book and I've pulled out what I think are 7 to 8 really seminal ideas. Every page is rich with insights. It's just that I thought these would be great talking points for us. So what we'll do is we've got 7 points, so we've got maybe 5 minutes per point. So I'll make a quick comment and then we'll open it up to your observations and insights, because I'm eager to hear about what role resistance has played in your work. And if we're going to do an overview, a 1-minute overview of this work, if you have paper and pen in front of you, you know me, put a vertical line down the center, put resistance over on the left. And essentially the case that Steven Pressfield is making is that we all face with resistance, we deal with resistance. Resistance is trying to battle us. And if we give in to resistance, we will not get our work out in the world. So over on the left, the lead is resistance. And if we let resistance win, we will not get our work out into the world, whether it's our books, whether it's our blogs, whether it's our stories, whether it's our art. And over on the right, put we win. Over on the left is resistance wins. Over on the right, we win. And if we do what he recommends here, which is to become a professional instead of an amateur, is that we win because we do get our work out in the world. And the whole third section of this book is that this is not coming from arrogance, it's service. He believes that we all have some genius in us. And this genius has been gifted to us by whatever divine power you believe in. And when we do not get our genius work out in the world, we are abdicating the gift that has been given us. In fact, we'll wrap up with the artist prayer that he has at the end, where he talks about shaming the angels. And that whoever is responsible for giving us this talent, this story, these lessons learned or insights, knowledge, that if we don't get it out in the world, we have shamed the angels, we have abdicated an opportunity to make an enduring difference, and we let resistance win. So let's hear what Steven Pressfield has to say about the unlived life. And then we'll ask if you have an unlived life. He said, most of us have 2 lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. And between the two stands resistance. Have you ever brought home a treadmill and let it gather dust in the attic? Ever quit a diet, a yoga course, a meditation practice? Have you ever bailed out on a call to embark upon something else? Have you ever wanted to be a mother, doctor, advocate, to run for office, crusade for the planet, preserve the environment? Late at night, have you experienced a vision of the person you might become, the work you could accomplish, the realized person you were meant to be? Are you a writer, though, who doesn't write? A painter who doesn't paint? An entrepreneur who never starts a venture? If so, then you know what resistance is. Resistance is the most toxic force on the planet. It is the root of more unhappiness than poverty, disease. And to yield to resistance deforms our spirit, stunts us, and makes us less than we are and were born to be. Wow, that's quite a case for resistance. So now, I just want to hear quickly, because quite frankly, this word resistance, I didn't really relate to it. I thought, I love to write, there were times I procrastinate, I put it off or whatever, but I love to write. I did not feel any resistance because of the power of this little book. I now see that resistance reside And in any time I find an excuse not to do the work that I believe I'm meant to do. So over to you. We have time for a couple comments before we move on. Is resistance a factor in your life, and how does it show up?
Yes, for me, for sure. And it shows up as, oh, I really want to do that thing. Oh, I need to clean that bathroom. Oh, I need to take care of a million other things. And oh, I didn't have time. And oh, I'll get to it tomorrow. And so it's not a conscious, I don't want to do that. That's under the surface. But it's the idea that other things are more important and I can do that tomorrow.
Boy, you know, and Kendra, we are recording this, right? Because I love to hear people's different insights about how it shows up. You just said, it's not like I don't want to do this. I'll do it tomorrow. It's just, I'm going to go clean first, or I'm going to go do this. Very insidious, isn't it? Very sneaky.
Sneaky.
Sneaky. Okay. Who else does resistance play a role in your life? And if so, how so?
I would say for me, it definitely shows up, but I also think I find there's a couple or maybe even a few different kinds of resistance. Some that seems almost, it's one of those times where I can't understand why I'm experiencing resistance. Like there's something deeper, and then timing will play out and I'll be like, oh, it's because of this timing that resistance occurs. So there's sometimes a beautiful resistance that occurs because the timing isn't right. But then there's another kind of resistance that's I have a fear or I have an avoidance that I'm struggling to face. And so I just keep pushing it away because there's resistance there. I'm not facing it or leaning into it. So that's kind of some different types.
Isn't it? It's like, oh, the irony. We resist resistance, right?
Yes.
Good. How about someone else? Does resistance play a role in your life? And if so, how so? Okay, and if you don't have something to say on this one, hang in there because we've got lots more talking points. So let's go. We're going to go on to page 7 and 8 now. And if you've got your book, you can kind of follow along. It's okay, page 7 and 8 says resistance cannot be seen, touched, heard, or smelled, but it can be felt. We experience it as an energy field radiating from a work in potential. It's a repelling force. It is negative. Its aim is to shove us away or distract us or prevent us from doing our work. Now he says something else that I thought would be interesting to ask your experience of this. Sometimes resistance seems to come from outside of ourselves. We locate it in our spouse, our job, our boss, our kids, our other work. Peripheral opponents, as Pat Riley used to say when he coached the LA Lakers. Resistance, though, is not a peripheral opponent. Resistance arises from within. It is self-generated and self-perpetuated. Resistance is the enemy within. So any thoughts from you about this? Is that sometimes when you have resistance, is it because someone's telling you that you'll never publish that and get paid for that, or that this isn't a real job, or have you always known that resistance comes from within, that it really is not from without? Your thoughts about that?
I think I relate to, what was the quote about the disappointing or failing your angels?
Oh yes, shaming our angels.
Shaming our angels, and we have these gifts, and then the other, like the devil on the shoulder is like, but who am I to share this?
You know, isn't that, it's interesting because he talks about imposter syndrome later, and he feels that doubts are resistance in like wolf clothing or sheep clothing, or however that is that we think we're coming from a good place. Oh, who am I to write this? I don't have a PhD, or I'm not perfect, or I'm not the world's expert. And all of that is just resistance dressing up as doubts. And yep. Other thoughts about resistance, whether it's coming from without or within, and what it looks like?
Well, I hadn't thought about it before, But what occurred to me as I was listening to what you were reading is that I have always had this pattern of, before I can do things I like to do, I have to do things I must do. So take care of whether it's the housekeeping or the cooking or taking somebody somewhere, whatever it is, taking care of those responsibilities that aren't as much fun, because I love the writing.
Do you know how deep that is? Because, and it's Rita, this is an interesting Puritan work ethic story that we tell ourselves, right? I mean, I'm just playing here. It's if writing is fun, then before we reward ourselves with something fun, we've got to get our real work done, right? And then we earn the right almost to write. And part of what he's trying to elevate this genius work as hopefully it is fun. However, it's not frivolous. And it's not something only to do when our other work is done. And we don't have to reward ourselves by being industrious, right? And then we earn the right. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think you've got it.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going because
Green had a comment also.
Oh, yes, please do.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me. Hello. I was just I agree with Rita, and I'm very family oriented, so I tend to take care of my clients and my family first. But I think in general, it's a mindset. When you mentioned the belief, I really believe that fear is a liar, and so I have to grab it and just sort of, my belief is more about abundance. And if I feel like God's given me all this abundance, time is just one of them. Sharing my gifts is another. And so I have to keep reminding myself of that and then just receive the gift of time that I have to write. I've always been more of a speaker than a writer. And I think, well, I can't really see the other person right there and really sort of adapt and give an analogy that might work with them based on my conversation. So it's, I have to imagine the other person there, and it takes me a little bit longer to write than it does to actually speak.
Yeah. I hope we all on our notes, if once again, vertical line down the center with resistance winning over on the left and we win over on the right, and take notes on these lovely different insights and experiences. What you just said about fear is on the left and abundance is on the right and real work is over on the left, fun work is over on the right. For us to really post that. And from now on, when we're ever not doing the work, and it is our genius work, it's what's calling us, it's what we know is going to add value, it's our contribution. For whatever reason we're not doing it, we can look at this list and maybe recognize some of these doubts or some of these resistance in sheep's clothing over on the left. So, okay, let's go on to procrastination, who he says, Stephen Pressfield says that it really, if resistance shows up as anything, it shows up as procrastination. In fact, he says, page 21, procrastination is the most common manifestation of resistance because it is the easiest to rationalize. We don't tell ourselves, I'm never going to write my symphony. Instead, we say, I am going to write my symphony. I'll just start it tomorrow, or after this. And the most pernicious, how about that word, huh? Do I get $1 for that word? It's Stephen. The most pernicious aspect of procrastination is that it can become a habit. We don't just put off our lives today, we put them off till our deathbed. Never forget this very moment, we can change our lives. There was never a moment and never will be when we are without the power to alter our destiny. This second, we can turn the tables on resistance. This second, we can choose to sit down and do our work. That powerful, guess why I wrote the Some Day is Not a Day in the Week book? because that was the biggest epiphany in 5 years on the road interviewing people around the world, is the habit, somewhat noble habit, which many of putting off what we really want to do because we feel it's irresponsible, and promising to ourselves that we will do that when the kids go off to school, when it's not so busy at work, when we retire, etc. And that habit of procrastination, in my observation, is going to be our biggest regret when we look back, that we did not spend our time on who is important and on what is important. So procrastination, all comments welcome.
I'll share on that. It's become a bad habit for me in the past. And I heard a great explanation of what it's about. It's that you're projecting an unwanted outcome in the future. I realized for me, it comes because I'm under there telling myself, I don't know how to do that. It's not going to be good. And then it creates that resistance and procrastination. So now that I know that, I've been reframing it and just saying, you're projecting an outcome you don't want. That's why you're procrastinating. Stop doing that. It's going to be great. You can do this.
Wow. Okay, Tara Conklin said our greatest work of art is the story we tell about ourselves. So what a wonderful insight to reframe. If we're afraid of some outcome that is bad, so we're putting it off, is to tell a better story about the outcome, right? Yeah. Smart, Rita. Excuse me, smart, Karen. Good. Who else?
I admit to resistance, and I don't want to admit it because you're recording this. But anyhow, some of the stuff, we mentioned Anne Lamott and shitty first drafts last week or some other time. So I guess when you say, okay, I'm just going to do whatever piece of junk I can do, then I have something. And then another thing that I came across in the recent past is our future self can handle it. So sometimes, well, I'm not quite sure how to pull this off or how I'm going to do it. But if I just start doing something, well, my future self, because it will be based on all the things that I've been doing now to work up to that future self, can handle what I don't know today.
Wow. Yay to our future self being able to handle it. So, all right, let's move on to another thought. What a great story on, let's see, on page 64 and 69. To me, this is the big idea of the book. If Stephen Pressfield was going to give a TED Talk on this work, it would be amateur on the left, professional over on the right. In fact, in 17 years of Maui Writers Conference, every single time a keynoter would get up, someone in the audience would ask some version of the question, do you ever have writer's block? And like almost to a person, they would scoff. It's like, no, carpenters don't have writer's block. Truck drivers don't have writer's block. I'm a professional. I have deadlines, I have book deals. I don't have writer's block because they can't afford to. Well, here is what Stephen Pressfield had to say about being a professional. He said, someone once asked Somerset Maugham if he wrote on a schedule or only when struck by inspiration. And Somerset Maugham said, I write only when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9 a.m. sharp. That's a pro. In terms of resistance, Mom was saying, I will not let resistance faze me. I will sit down and do my work. And he recognized another deeper truth, that by performing the mundane physical act of sitting down and starting to work, he set in motion a mysterious but infallible sequence of events that would produce inspiration as surely as if the goddess had synchronized her watch with his. He knew if he built it, she would come. And this is, isn't it? This is a recurring theme of professional writers, is that Madeline L'Engle, who wrote A Wrinkle in Time, said, inspiration usually occurs during work, not before it. So this whole idea of waiting for inspiration, we're going to be waiting for a long time. And now here are the signs. Here's a checklist on page 69 of what it means to be a professional. Number one, we show up every day. Number two, we show up no matter what. Number three, we stay on the job all day. Or if we are juggling with our family or our other work for 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 1 hour a day, whatever it is we say is our time limit. Four, we are committed over the long haul. In other words, we do not quit, we persevere. Five, now this is interesting. The stakes for us are high and real. In other words, this isn't an indulgent. This isn't just a hobby. This isn't just something we do in our free time. We are elevating our genius work, our writing, our art, to taking a bigger responsible role in our life, that we feel we must do this. It's not just something, once again, that we do when everything else is taken care of. Six, we accept remuneration for our labor. In other words, we get paid. If someone wants to, is that our goal is to earn a living doing this, or to make money doing this, or to generate some tangible bottom line ROI, so that we're elevating it once again to being a professional and not just a hobbyist. Now, this is interesting. Number 7, he said, we do not over-identify with our jobs. I'm going to read the whole thing he says about this because it's kind of counterintuitive. We may take pride in our work. We may stay late. We may come in on weekends, but we recognize we are not our job descriptions. The amateur, on the other hand, over-identifies with his avocation, his artistic aspiration. He defines himself by it. Resistance loves this. Resistance knows that the amateur will never write because he is overly invested in his success and over terrified of its failure. The amateur takes it so seriously, it paralyzes him. Isn't that? I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that, because it really kind of flies in the face of both elevating our genius work to a responsibility and our professional work, and at the same time, not taking it so seriously that it's life and death. 8, we master the technique of our jobs. What are the craft tools? 9, we have a sense of humor about our jobs. We understand the ups and downs and the roller coaster and the humor. 10, we receive praise or blame in the real world. I think the master of this is Stephen King. Stephen King has published how many books over the years? And, for many years, he was considered a pop culture writer. He was not welcomed into the glitterati or the literati because he was not a serious author. And it is only in the last 5 years that the Association of Poet and Letters and the other respected literary organizations have understood that Stephen King has lasted the test of time. He's written serious books, deep books. He keeps writing books, even when he was walking on the side of the road and got mowed over by a van and broke almost every bone in his body, was in bed for a long time. He kept writing. And so now Stephen King finally has the respect within the industry that he deserves. And look, we receive praise or blame in the real world. And when all those critics out there were nitpicking at him, he just kept writing and doing what he felt was his genius work. So do you identify with any of this checklist of what it means to be a pro?
Are we still muted? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Sure.
First of all, I love the humor piece because I have to sometimes laugh from crying. So I build that in some way. I have to have my stopping points, either it's music or humor. But I really like the balance piece because it's so important. And I feel like in what I've learned from mentoring women entrepreneurs really globally is that the reason they stop is because they are lonely. They don't have the pats on the back. They are not making enough money to justify the effort. And so when I ask and I talk about getting my hands around the numbers for editing and which way to go, it's because that's one component that I have to care about to know if it's the means is going to justify the end, which for me in writing, it's always been just a blessing and for my own pleasure and for poems that I give my clients or whatever, my journals. So for me to step out this way, I haven't gotten a lot of accolades for my writing. And so it seems a little bit more risky, if you will. But I love the idea of the balance. I guess it was number 7. I don't remember which one that was, but
Yeah. Yeah, we do not over-identify with it and this, yep, good. Okay, who else? What's one of these criteria? Or do you feel like you're a pro when it comes to your writing?
I don't know that I'm a pro when it comes to some of my fiction writing, but I used to write for Intel and I wrote network management software manuals that, I had not that much interest in doing, but I did it and I went every day. And I think when it comes to art stuff that is more personal, I've decided, I also have 4 children that are now in their 20s and they've all left home. And when they go live their lives, somebody says to them, oh, well, whatever they tell them at work or not, if they tell them good things or bad things, I'm not there, but I was their mom and I don't take it personally. So I think when it comes to art, it's the same way. Maybe we give birth to our art, but once we've put it out into the world, then people may say, yes, I like it, or no, I don't like it. But that's the arts stuff to deal with. It's not about me, it's about the work of art. And the work of art can deal with the comments that it gets.
Well, props, Catherine. I hope you write about that. Isn't that an interesting idea about writing is like our kids, and once it's out in the world, instead of helicopter parenting and stuff like that, it's like could I write about that, Catherine? That's a great idea. So okay, let's move on to the next aspect. Play the wind on 81, page 81. Is that my friend the Hawk and I were playing the first hole at Prestwick in Scotland. As you know, Stephen Pressfield is quite the golfer. He wrote the Legend of Bagger Vance, which is, boy, if you hadn't seen that movie, talk about great writing. So he's playing in Scotland and the wind was howling out of the left. And I started an 8-iron 30 yards to windward, meaning, the wind's coming this way and he's like 30 yards compensating. But the gale caught it and I watched in dismay as the ball sailed hard right, hit the green going sideways and bounded off into the cabbage. Son of a, you know what? I turned to our caddy. Did you see the wind take that shot? And he gave me a look that only Scottish caddies can give. Well, we've got to play the wind now, don't we? The professional conducts his business in the real world. Adversity, injustice, bad hops, rotten calls, good breaks, lucky bounces, all comprise the ground over which the campaign must be waged. The field is level, the professional understands, only in heaven. So here's my question for you. What's the wind for you? If you're going to play the wind, these are circumstances that might offer resistance to doing your work. A quick example, Jacqueline Michard, who was Oprah's first pick for Deep Into the Ocean. She had 5 kids. She was a single mom at the time, 5 kids. She wrote for 1 or 2 hours of the day max at the kitchen table in between when her kids went off to school and when they came home. So she played the wind. She could have said, oh, well, I don't have time to write. She played the wind. So what is the wind for you that could be a very valid reason for not writing, but you're playing it. You're not using it as an excuse.
I'll share, Sam, as I shared it in a previous, writing is new to me, especially writing in this context. And so it's the wind. I'm grateful for the wind. The wind is my business, my coaching practice. So setting aside time to write, which is more of a much more long-term vision, dream, outcome that I don't even have clear yet, versus my business that is really clear. And I know exactly what I need to do and that I'm good at it. That's my wind. Just explain something that I'm really not good at, don't know what I'm doing, and don't know what it's going to result in, versus doing what I know is, and also that's revenue generating right away.
You know, a quick thought. This is such an evocative metaphorical story that if you, giving Stephen Pressfield credit, if we say, I was reading this fascinating book called The War of Art, and Stephen Pressfield tells this story and we quote him, and then we have some personal epiphany. And I realized my wind was my business, the fact that And then remember, we hook and hinge back to the reader. So what's your wind? What's your reason why you're not doing what you really want? What are you using as an excuse instead of action? What are you using as results, as reasons instead of results? If you put that kind of post on LinkedIn, and then you say that as a coach, one of your goals is to help your clients identify their wind, the reasons why they're not performing at the level they want, starting their business, positioning themselves for that promotion or something like that. Do you see how use something like this with credit, hook and hinge it, and then add value? You put a post like that up at LinkedIn, you're going to get some traction. So, good. What else? Another example of wind that you're playing.
Well, I'm thinking of wind. My oldest son is a kite boarder. Anyway, you fly kites. He does it on the snow. He does it on the water. He can do it on the ocean. He can do it on the lake in Utah where he lives. And the wind is what makes the kite go, but he jumps into it and he does all these tricks with it. And it's the wind that on the one hand is what you harness, is what makes it possible for you to do all the amazing things that you can do once you learn how to deal with the wind.
Catherine, you're on fire tonight, Catherine. Catherine, write about that too. And now quoting Catherine, and back to you, Karen, is like, that is reframing the wind, right? It's not doggone that wind. It took my ball. That would have hit the green if it wasn't for the wind. No, play with it, harness it, ride it. It's just a great analogy. So, okay, let's go.
I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Catherine too, as well as you, because my coaching practice is called Harness Your Hindrance. So that was perfect. So thank you.
Well, there you go. Now, by the way, Catherine had put in our Facebook community that she's looking for an accountability partner. So if any of you think, yes, I'd like to meet once a week, once every 2 weeks, even for half an hour, have you made progress? Is there, you want just a shoulder to cry on, an ear to listen to or something? So maybe get in touch with Catherine in our Facebook community if you'd like an accountability partner moving forward. And boy, this a very important story on 87 is that a professional does not take failure personally. When people say an artist has a thick skin, what they mean is not that the person is dense or numb, but that he has seated his professional consciousness in a place other than his personal ego. It takes tremendous strength of character to do this because our deepest instincts run counter to it. Evolution has programmed us to feel rejection in our gut. This is how the tribe enforced obedience, by wielding the threat of expulsion. Fear of rejection isn't just psychological, it's biological. It's in our cells. Resistance knows this and uses it against us. It uses fear of rejection to paralyze us and prevent us, if not from doing our work, then at least from exposing it to public evaluation. Now, I got a quick story about a thick skin. Is that when I wrote my book, Pop, I turned it in to my editor and she got back. Now, some of this I only know in retrospect. This was not the editor who represented me at Penguin Putnam. She had assigned a copy editor to it. The copy editor ripped it to shreds. I mean, to shreds. Red line, irrelevant. I will always remember in the last quarter of the book, I made a point that Pop is not just about coming up with clever titles or taglines or positioning or messages. It really is, from the beginning of time, oratory has changed history. You know, our greatest leaders have all been orators. And if we study and learn and get good at this craft of communication, we can elevate our impact for good. And I used as an example that there was a state senator who was really only known in his district, maybe on a state level. And then in 15 minutes, he spoke at the Democratic National Convention. And in 15 minutes, he became what many people feel was the next Democratic candidate for president. In 15 minutes, he went from being obscure, once again, boom, everyone's saying, he's our guy. Of course, who am I talking about? I'm talking about Obama. Well, this editor put a little Post-it on it and said, I've never heard of this guy. And if you're going to use someone as an example, then you should at least make sure that people have heard of this individual. I was so depressed, I went to bed for 24 hours because, see, I believed in that work. I thought it was very good. And this person just didn't like this, didn't feel this was relevant, really was very critical of that work. And after 24 hours of a deep depression, I had to rebound and believe in my work. And so I talked with my editor, and what I found out was this copy editor was a 24 English Lit grad. She'd never been in business. She didn't know anything about titling, business, entrepreneurs, all of that. So see, and she was 24. She'd just gotten out of college. So boy, when we talk about a thick skin, we also really need to be careful who we hear input from. Because I believe in book support groups, although in the last 20 years, I cannot tell you how many people have gone to a writing support group. And when their work is criticized, if there's 10 people in the group, they get 9 different opinions on this is good, this is bad, I don't like that, this doesn't work. And it can be absolutely crazy making. So I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to ask you, how do you stay centered in your work while being open to feedback and input? However, do you have criteria for whether you trust this input, whether you believe this person knows what they're talking about so you can take it on board and it will make the book better? Or is it just going to take you a notch and cause you to abandon a work that could add value? Your experiences with that, please?
Well, I'll just start by saying I'm very discerning about, I guess, sharing my work. I have people that come to me and I love to give them, I have the skills to give balanced feedback, but I recognize not everybody does. I think it would be difficult. I guess my question is back to you. Can you switch an editor if you're with a house, if you feel like you're not in alignment with a current editor? Not that you don't expect some feedback and changes, but in this particular case, I mean, who doesn't know Obama? That's like a little red flag.
See, yes, and kind of that's the point of the story is, Seth Godin said this is, he's one of the gurus. I really respect Seth. Seth gave it a cover endorsement and said it was, he called it revolutionary. And so I believe the work had value. And so I talked with my agent about it, and we went back to my publisher and said, can we please have a different editor? Someone with business experience, someone with some miles under their belt, someone who's maybe been an entrepreneur, someone who has experience in this topic area instead of having no experience with it whatsoever. So yes, you can, with cause, ask for a different editor.
I think that kind of rapport is important.
And a bottom line business case. I was not complaining, no drama. It
Right.
was, here are people who feel it has value. And so this was in their best interest as well to make sure that the book was edited in a way that was going to help it sell. So, and Karen, I saw your hand up, or you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to share that, when I first started writing my first book in 2011, I had no idea. And so I picked a woman who was a local, very notable cookbook editor. And she basically took a red line to my book and cut out half of it. And I really didn't know that she didn't know about what I was writing about health. And so I took all her suggestions and was left with not a bad book, but a pretty thin book with not as much meat. But she told me nobody wanted to know all that, and she took it all out. But people do want to know all that. So in hindsight, I'm glad that I'm hooked up with people who understand my genre, what I'm who I'm writing for, and who I think will be better able to guide me. So.
Yeah. Good for you. I think that you reached out to Ann Janzer, and
Yeah.
she's an example of, she's a very successful nonfiction author herself. She has worked on many nonfiction books. She knows how to deliver books. She is 100% in integrity, and she knows your genre. So, that's going to be a 1 + 1 = 11 relationship.
Yay. Thank you for sending me to her.
Yeah, she's the real deal.
Okay.
Good. To watch our time, let's go ahead and on page 159, what an evocative idea. And this is, okay, would you like to know a criteria for whether this is your genius work? Here's the question. If I were on the last person on earth, would I still do it? Whew. If you're all alone on the planet, there's no one to impress, would you still pursue this activity? And when I read that, I wrote down, in a state of flow, if I were the last person on earth, I would still write, I would still swim, and I would still walk. And I don't care if anyone knew it. I don't care if anyone ever saw it. It's so pure for me. Those are 3 things that if there's no one else around, I would still do for their intrinsic value. Because as Annie Sexton said, when I am writing, I am doing the thing I was born to do. And I feel that way about walking and swimming too. How about you? If you're the last person on earth, you're going to be working on this project?
Well, I think it says something about us if we say, if I'm not the last person, then am I afraid of what other people say? And if I'm the last person, then I no longer have that fear. So if that's the case, why not let go of that fear, even though there are other people walking around? And I like what you said last week. I wasn't here because I had rehearsal, but this offering that we're giving, if we're not giving our offering, and thinking of it that way is much better than thinking, oh, will they like what I do? Instead, it's an offering. It's our gift.
Yes, agreed. Other thoughts?
I can honestly say I would not be writing a book on negotiation.
Oh, now see, isn't that's why
Topically,
that
it
criteria is a deal maker.
Yeah,
A
it
deal
topically
breaker.
doesn't type. It's the only person on earth. However, I would still like to talk to, nature. I would still think through things. I would still write my thoughts. I would still, write about things that I love, like family and, I'm a deep thinker. So I would still think through things. And if I had to talk to a tree or an owl or whatever, it would be fine. But I don't think I would talk about negotiation.
Mhm.
And again, even in my mastermind, it wasn't like, let's talk all about negotiation. It just happened to be
Yeah.
the one thing that kept coming up that women were fearful of, and that I could assist them with easily.
You know, why I love this question so much is that it is going to help us love our book. You know, Karen, bring this up with Anne. Write what you want to say in this book. There was another phrase is that Stephen Pressfield said the biggest shift he made was to write what he wanted to write instead of writing what he thought would work. He wrote Legend of Bagger Vance and he did not think it would work. It's about golf, you know, it's like it's spiritual. However, it's what he wanted to write, which is what resonates. And I really believe people are so ready for the truth and for honesty and humanity. And even if you wrote the book on negotiation, but you asked yourself, what do I want to say that I believe so much, heartfelt? That will imbue the book with this, you know, conviction and passion and honesty. So let's read the artist's prayer. This is on page 165 as we wrap it up, our discussion of The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. He said, are you born to be a writer? Were you put on earth to be a painter, a scientist, an apostle of peace? In the end, the question can only be answered by action. Do it or don't do it. It may help you to think of it this way. If you were meant to cure cancer or write a symphony or crack cold fusion and you don't do it, you not only hurt yourself and even destroy yourself, you hurt your children, you hurt me, you hurt the planet. You shame the angels who watch over you. You spite the Almighty who created you, and only you with your unique gifts for the sole purpose of nudging the human race 1 millimeter further along on its path back to God. Creative work is not a selfish act or a bid for attention. It is a gift to the world and every being in it. Don't cheat us of your contribution. Give us what you've got. Well, it's been a joy discussing this book with you. You have additional thoughts, you didn't have a chance to say a line that really impacted you or something you did differently as a result of the book, please put it in our Facebook community. And I look forward to seeing you next week when we're going to have our member showcase and you get to ask any question you want and we'll brainstorm it, strategize it. So I'm Sam Horn. Thank you, Stephen Pressfield, for a really impactful book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Onward.
Thank you.
Thank you.